I am just looking for, okay, and it's automatically recording. Great. Okay. Hello, everyone just trickling into the room. We are watching our attendees number get a little bit higher here. All right, more people coming in and joining. I love it. I love it. Okay, we'll give it another minute. Thank you all for coming in. All right. Okay. Well, I will go ahead and get us started now that people seem to be jumping in and getting settled. Thank you so much, everybody on the other side of this camera that I get to look at. Thank you for being in the space with us today. And this chat is with Harleen Singh, filmmaker and director of the documentary Drawn Together, Comics, Diversity, and Stereotypes. And we are so grateful to have her here with us today as part of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Reading Challenge. So I am Lisa Young, and I am Access Services Director for Library Services here at Lindenwood University. And I am one of the DEI Employee Fellows for this academic year. Now I'll turn it over to Leah.
Hi everyone, I'm Leah Rosenmiller. I am the Engagement and Outreach Librarian for Library Services, and I am the other DEI Employee Fellow for this academic year. As DEI Employee Fellows, our project has been leading the DEI Reading Challenge, where readers read one book a month from a variety of diverse themes, submit a monthly reflection form, and can meet once a month with other readers to discuss their experiences reading the book and how the book impacts their lives, their service to the Lindenwood community, and beyond.
All right. So now that you know who the employee fellows and the hosts of this event are, unfortunately, we do not know who our attendees are. So what I mean by that is that we have experienced a technical glitch where all of our attendees show up as Lisa Young. And it's important to know who you are, because at the end of the session, we are giving away a $25 gift card to I See Me, which is an African-American children's bookstore that also sells adult books here in University City, Missouri here. And we had hosted the owner of this bookstore earlier this month. So we want to be sure to give one of you lucky attendees away, or give the gift card away to one of you. So please use the chat and let us know who you are. Just please put your name in there so that we can award one of you the gift card at the end of our sessions. So you can also use our chat box throughout our conversation with Harleen to put your questions for her in there, and we will be sure to answer them a bit further into our chat. But before we ask Harleen questions, we have one question for you. I am going to stop sharing my screen here, and I'm going to launch a poll. Thank you for those of you who are filling in your names. I see you. Thank you so much. I am going to launch the poll for you all here. All right, and the poll is, how familiar are you with Harleen's documentary? So either you have watched it and you're ready to hear Harleen talk about it, or you have heard of it, but you haven't seen it yet, or this is my first time hearing about it. Tell me more. I'll give it a minute here. A few more seconds. Thank you for participating, everyone. I know you just jumped into this webinar. We are giving you all sorts of assignments and things to do, so thank you for doing that. All right, I think we have reached the end of our poll. Okay, I am going to share the results because they are mostly even. This is really cool. So we have a great mix. We have about 28% that have watched it and are ready to hear Harleen talk about it, 39% that have heard of it, haven't seen it, and 33% that want to know more. Okay, and I am just going to make sure I'm stopping to share. Okay, so before we start talking to Harleen, I just want to give you all no matter how familiar you are with Harleen and her film and introduction. So Harleen established her production house in the San Francisco Bay Area with a mission to imagine, create, and inspire diversity of thought. The production house's principal purpose is to produce international films that foster new thoughts and ideas that showcase stories of strength and resilience. Their recent documentary, Drawn Together, Comics Diversity and Stereotypes, traces the fascinating journey of three comic creators who challenge the notion of race, appearance, and gender stereotypes through cartoons, comics, and cosplay. It was selected in over 52 international film festivals worldwide and won 9 awards, including Best Documentary, Freedom Award, and Jason G. Mack Award for Social Justice. It was also screened in over 100 educational institutions and was showcased on PBS. Harleen is now working on a new documentary, Good Luck, Julia. It's a film about how a Sikh family helps reunite Julia, a teenage girl stuck in India, with her family. The documentary showcases how different communities, irrespective of caste, creed, region, religion, language, or borders, come together to help a child reunite with her family. It's also about trust, friendship, and resilience. So these are all things we can get behind. So to start celebrating Harleen and her work and her contributions to this world, Harleen, our first question for you is, in a great article that you wrote for Huffington Post, you called yourself an accidental filmmaker. Can you take us back and tell us the story behind that?
Sure. First of all, it's really a pleasure being with all of you today. It's so nice to have a conversation. I think these days you crave for it. So thank you so much for inviting me, for watching my film, and sharing this audience with me. Accidental filmmaker, yeah. You know, I started. I'm from India, and my father was in the Indian Army, so we traveled quite a bit. Then after my masters, I joined National Geographic Channel, and I used to always, think about documentaries, and hey, one day I'll do something, but never kind of got to do anything. Then I went on to do my MBA. Got placed in Colgate in New York as in the marketing team, and then life took on. From Colgate, I went to Bolt House Farms, part of Campbell Soups, and life was just going on just like a regular job. But there was a point in my life where I said, I want to do something with regards to media. I didn't know what, but I just wanted to do something and contribute. And I was like, let me just explore. So I really became an RJ first. Then I did a podcast series. And then from there on, I felt that while audio is great, visual medium really captures your imagination. And really, if we don't tell our own stories, nobody else will, right? So I didn't want to wait for somebody and just jump. I wanted to just jump right in. But I think the right way to do it was to kind of educate oneself as to how filmmaking is done. So I took up a few courses in Stanford, in Mountain View as well. And then I kind of jumped in and created the first story, which was about uh, you know, inspiring oneself when you face challenges. It was about a person who felt he had a lot of challenges in this world, and so he can't really become a triathlete until he meets somebody who is an amputee by choice. And when he saw the other person, he's like, well, if he can do it with certain resilience, why can't I? So that was the story about friendship, resilience, and overcoming challenges. Once we did that, I realized that there are certain other topics that need to be connected, and hence Drawn Together also came in. These are things not just I would say accidental, yes, but at the same time you need to put in that bit of an effort as well. Um, so when we actually started to explore as to what could be the next film, we realized that stereotyping was a big issue, And we kind of wanted to understand more about it, and then try to understand the layers of stereotyping. So if there is a woman who is driving, she has to be a bad driver. Or these days sometimes you hear about stories during COVID that we just try to judge people, we don't even know them. If there's a mother who's taking a child to Safeway, maybe there is a problem versus just commenting about it. um, so we need to just get past our stereotypes. But if we actually talk about this topic in a way that I'm lecturing people that, hey, this is how you need to do it, then nobody's going to listen to you. Even though you're saying the right things, you don't connect with people. And hence the films, we wanted to have that as a medium to start a conversation. um, and Drawn Together was born out of that as well. So that's how I guess my journey really just took shape. There was nothing which was planned. So
I love it, Harleen. I love it. Just you answering that first question, I'm just scribbling away notes. I love that quote. If we don't tell our own stories, no one else will. I think we can all say a big thank you for telling your story here today and using your films to do so. So I know you talked a little bit about, trying to understand stereotypes and really explore that. So when you set out to begin creating this film, did you have that intention or that message in mind? And do you do that with each one of your films?
um, I try and do that with every film. There has to be a message that somebody, watches the film and kind of takes away. There has to be an image that kind of, stays with you. So when Drawn Together was kind of, thought the concept was coming through, um, frankly, I didn't know how I want to show it on screen. So I took about 6 months to understand what would be a good medium to show it, or rather a canvas to show it. I knew it's going to be a documentary, but how does one show it in a way that connects with people from, all kinds of backgrounds, religion, countries? So the research kind of said that there are a few languages which are universal, right? So, for example, music and sports are universal languages, and so are comics. We didn't really have the budget for music or sports. So we were like, and comics was something unique to me. And I was like, wow, I've always been fond of comics, but not to this degree. So I wanted to explore that as a topic and a canvas to talk about this story. The other thing was that the topic could be very heavy if you wanted to, and it could be like a one-way street. And but we wanted to inject some bit of a humor in it. And so comics was that perfect foil, which not only brought intelligent conversation, but it also brought in that humor. So when you watch the film, if you look at one of Keith's creation, Keith Knight is one of our lead protagonists, and he has this one big image which says, um, all lives matter, and then there's an asterisk there, and then you'd go down and the asterisk says, um, see skin color for details. It's just such a hard hitting thing that you it just makes you smile and think at the same time. So I think it was all these qualities that when it came together, I was like, yes, this is something that I want to make and be part of. Um, the other part that I wanted to show on screen was not just a biography of one person. What I also wanted to show was all of us are different. Each of us is an individual with different qualities and different experiences. And yet there is a common thread. So we have an African American, a Sikh, and a Caucasian woman. On the face of it, there's nothing which is similar in their backgrounds, their experiences. And yet there is this common thread that all of them were stereotyped at one point or the other in their lives, and how they used comics as a medium to counter that. So for me, it was important to not just show, the idea of stereotyping, but show it that they experienced it and they overcame it. And if we can show that to anybody and say, they can do it with just a simple pen and paper. A lot of us have more resources at hand and we can do much more. So that's the idea, that every single film, I try and show that thing, that sometimes we just think of our own challenges and box ourselves. We just have to look for another inspiration and say, hey, that guy could do it, I can do it too. Why can't I? That's something that I would like to show in my films.
Wow. Yes. I think that idea of the common thread, as somebody who's watched your film, that definitely comes across, that connecting and using the universal language of comics. And I love how you say how they use it to overcome, you know, um, to overcome the ways that they have been stereotyped. So how did you choose these three comic creators to feature in your film?
I think a lot of it was very organic. One thing led to the other. And Eileen was somebody that I knew of, and so she came in first. And then while researching, it led to Vishwajit, who was the second. And then I didn't know anything about Keith Knight at all. And then I somehow started to research and got to know of him. And I remember I had literally no direct connection, and I just left a voice message that I'm making, this is the film, and this is what I'm trying to do. And he replied back and left a voice message, and he says, yeah, I'm on. He didn't know me, nothing, no details. And I was like, wow, this is fantastic. And then, I think now we are all just a family. And beyond that, while I wanted these three characters and these three people with amazing story to come in, I also wanted to show context. Now, the context came in with the experts who, are part of the film. So we have an expert who talks about how media creates the prejudices as well. He's part of he was part of Al Jazeera network. And then we have a person who manages museum, the Cartoon Art Museum here in San Francisco. And he talks about the importance of these three artists and comics in general. And lastly, we have Professor Arvind Singhal, who teaches in El Paso, Texas. And he talks about this entire notion of how entertainment can actually educate. And so they all three help blend in these three, lovely stories and put the whole thing together for us. So every single person, it was research, it was reaching out to them, and we never heard a no. Like whoever we reached out to, they just came along without like a direct connection, without knowing me, who I am, what am I going to do. There was this inherent trust factor that what she's trying to say to us, I think she will deliver. And the rest is, has been a very lovely experience with them.
That's so great to hear that they were all on board. That was actually going to be a question that I asked you, when you were reaching out to everybody to contribute and to be featured or share their expertise or their story. I was going to ask if they were apprehensive or like, wow.
No, not at all. I think all of them were very forthcoming. We, I mean, wherever I was pregnant with my second child, and I had a 1-year-old already, so I was in a tough spot. So I was like this, big belly and walking around and kind of shooting the whole film. So, but none of them actually had any problems or any issues with regards to how will we feature. And we at our end also, we involved them throughout the making, that this is how we're going to make it, this is the first cut of the film. And they also kind of contributed as well. So it's been a wonderful journey working with them, and taking the film to different places.
Wow. Wow. So Harleen, can you share what your role was? Were you a one man, one woman band, I should say, where you were doing a lot of the different aspects of filmmaking? Or what was your role?
So I directed and produced the film, and I feel that sometimes in a creative adventure like this, you're never alone. You might just start out as being a single person, but you're never alone. You know, in this journey, a lot of people help you, your family. Like I said, I had, you know, I was pregnant, I had another one coming. Um, so there are challenges. Then your family steps and says, okay, you go shoot, you know, we'll take care of the child. Or, then you have your editor. I had a wonderful editor, Thal, who was very supportive and, you know, sharing ideas and say, all right, you know, this is what you should do and this is how we should do it. Our sound person was fantastic as well. And you know, our camera person just loved it. He was so fond of comics, and we shot it at the Comic Con in San Diego, which was just a brilliant experience for all of us put together. So I think every single person who was part of it. We also did a Kickstarter campaign to raise some funds. All of those people who joined hands and said, all right, you know, you start off your journey and we are there to support you, to back you. I would say every single person played a role. Yes, maybe my name is front and center, but at the same time, I couldn't have done it without, you know, the help of everybody. And that's sort of a message to, you know, even everybody who's part of your, you know, webinar today, that if you have an idea, be it writing a book, be it starting a book club, whatever your idea is, you know, you might just think, I can't do it, or, you know, who's going to entertain this idea? Start off, take that first step, because you never know who's going to back you, you know. You never know who's going to join hands, and you just never know how a single step can actually lead to a miles journey or millions of miles journey. So start off, you know, that first step is critical. I could have given up at any point, you know. I didn't have an incentive of, oh my God, it's for the money, it's for the name, what is it? I could have even told myself, I can wait for 3 more years, you know, let my children grow up. I don't have to do it. But at the same time, you just feel like, why not? You know, instead of saying why, it has to always be why not. And then once you do that, then you get your answers. And then you also get people from different walks of life, you know, just come in. Lisa, do you mind if I share a story here?
We are here for your stories, Harleen. We're at the front row of wherever we're at.
So this was a brilliant example of how people just come together. Now, a few years ago, Shah Rukh Khan, an Indian celebrity, was supposed to come to San Francisco for a film festival. And, you know, I was just, you know, waiting in line with my husband. And but 40 minutes out, and there was a person right behind us. So we just started to chat, and I told him about my film and how I was very close to completing it. And he said, I'm a writer. And he says, you know, why don't you send me what you have and let me take a look? And he just gave me his, you know, name. And we all sat together when we were watching Shah Rukh Khan. I don't know what struck me. And I told my husband, I said, you know what? I just feel there is more to this person than just that email that he gave me. And went back home and, you know, Googled him. And it turned out this guy, his name is Michael Porras, and he created Hannah Montana and so many other shows on Disney. So he was the executive producer on a few other shows. And here was a person I had no idea about who he was in the first place. And then he comes along and he says, I will help you. And he actually looked at the footage and helped us, you know, schedule it, bring it together, you know, even scene by scene for no incentive. There was nothing financial, really nothing, not even a mention. And he just came along and he helped us. And today he's a very dear friend. And off and on, we'll be like chatting and talking to each other, talking about his new projects. So here's something that, you know, if you actually pledge to do something, you just never know how the whole ecosystem would just come together. So this is just an example. Sorry to digress, but it was something I wanted to share with your audience.
That is a perfect example of just sharing what I would consider your heart. You know, here's an idea, here's a message that I really want to share with the world. And if I can be vulnerable about wanting to pursue that, like you said, why versus why not? And then people come along beside you. That is a wonderful story. That is fantastic. And I'm, you know, as a segue into my next question, when you think about these relationships in these communities, those have to help you during your challenging parts of filmmaking. So, what is challenging? What is the most challenging about being a filmmaker? And how do you strive to overcome it?
I think there are a few things. Let's say one, I'll keep the finances aside. Raising funds is a challenge, but I'll keep that aside. I think a lot of challenges are right here.
Mm.
You kind of bind yourself and say, I cannot do this. This is just beyond me. There is no way I can handle this today. But I think there is a way to overcome it. And there's another story here. I was 39 weeks pregnant, and there was just one person that we had left to shoot, which was Harleen Singh in El Paso, Texas. And he gave us this one date, and he says, I'm only available on this date. I'm traveling quite a bit. So you can shoot on this date. And I went to my, doctor and I said, I have to travel. And he's like, you just can't. You're 39 weeks pregnant. But I had to find a way because otherwise Arvind would not be available for the next 3 months. So eventually I had to kind of parcel off my husband there along with the camera person and the audio guy. And I was on Skype and I was interviewing. And my husband kept telling me, he's like, if you deliver, I'll never forgive you for this, which is an extreme case. But the idea was that if there was a challenge, there is always a way to overcome that challenge as well. So I think sometimes we just bind ourselves that this is the problem. I think it's more important to say, hey, what are the solutions or other possible solutions? And one of them might just fit in. So I think to me, just being a very positive person, I just feel that, yes, there is a problem, but there has to be a solution. And let me look for that versus looking at the problem and kind of saying, I just can't. Because every one of us, in this Zoom world that we are in, we are all facing the problem. There is always a screen time, but you have to get over it. You can't just sit down and crib. We have to just move past it and say, all right, things would just get better. It's just a phase. How can I just stay positive, calm, and patient? Let's just go forward.
Well, it definitely shows in your heart, Harleen, for sure. So, what brings you on the opposite side? What brings you the most joy, or what is the most life giving about being a filmmaker?
Um, what's great is to interact with the audience because you can't create a film in vacuum. And the film that you create is never just for yourself. People would look at it and react to it. It could be in a good way or a bad way. And as a person, I'd love to learn what connected and what didn't connect, because what connected would help me understand, all right, there is this thread over here that seems to connect with a certain set of people. On the other hand, what didn't connect, or which I was trying to convey, shows me that as a filmmaker I have lots to learn, right? So I think it's that whole idea of audience interaction which kind of peps me up as well. Yes, going to film festivals and winning awards and all of that is nice, but on at a different level, there is something that that just touches your heart. I was in Calgary once. I was just narrating this story to you that I was in Calgary and I had gone for a film festival there, and that film festival happened to be in a church. So I was probably the odd one out, and there were a few people who kind of gave me weird, stares, and then I was just like smiling and moving on. And then when the program really started, they said, "Hey, we're going to show this film, and the filmmaker is in town, and here she is." I went up on the stage and just said my hello, and then we watched the film together, and then after the film there was a Q&A, and that lasted for almost an hour. And I answered any question that came my way. And then they told me that you can be at a table outside. So when I was at that table, an old lady, maybe I should not say old, but a lady who was probably in her 70s came over to me and kind of, hugged me, and she had tears in her eyes. And I was like, oh my God, I said something that didn't go well with her. I said, oh my God, what is it? I said, what happened? And she told me, she's like, when you came in, I judged you, that what is she doing here? And then when you went on stage, I was like, mm-hmm. And then when I was about to see your film, I didn't think much of it. But when I saw your film and then I heard you, I was like, why was I judging her before I even knew anything what she has done? So, I'm so sorry about it. And then she wrote a nice little note as well. So, those kind of stories just touch you. And you never forget that experience, that hug, that look on the face, because you were able to. I would not say she stereotyped me in a negative way or whatever. She had a view. But at the same time, she understood that boxing people, judging book by the cover only, may not be the right way. You need to understand where that person is coming from, get to know a person, and then make an informed judgment. So when you get that kind of a reaction from the audience, I think to me that's very critical because that's the message that I'd like to convey on the film as well.
Absolutely. I was hoping you were going to share that story. Harleen shared it with us before in the waiting room, and I was hoping that that would come out. So thank you so much for sharing that, because that, like I said, that just one of those stories or one of those experiences that just makes you say, this is why I do what I do. Um, so my next question for you is, how do you get your ideas or inspiration for your films? And do you have, a running list of ideas, and then you have to whittle down which one you're going to pursue? Tell us more about that.
So I think, filmmaking comes from the heart. Unless you're doing a corporate shoot where you're just doing it for the money. For me, a documentary really comes from your heart as to what topic, touches you, what stories you think you can contribute best. Now, I feel that I'm not yet ready to make a magna opus. It's like a big, big historical film. I don't think I'm ready for that yet. But I think each individual has a story. So when you hear these stories, you're like, you know what? This is something that I'd like to do, or this is something that I'd like to show it on screen because it might inspire other people. So I don't really have a list of things. Sometimes, things just happen to you, or sometimes people just share an experience, or you read an article and you'd like to pursue. So, I think it's very organic for me. I don't really go out and seek information unless it's for like a ready project, like for comics and diversity. I really actually had to research. But other than that, I don't seek information. Things, there is an idea that then you just kind of, build it up and see how best you can actually put it on screen. So that's how I work. But there are different filmmakers who do different things. And it's always good to hear how people got an idea as well. So interesting stories to hear and explore.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's talk about things that have influenced you now. Let's start with films, as we've been talking about films a lot. What films have you seen throughout your lifetime that have influenced you and your heart, and your mission and your filmmaking?
Interesting question because I tend to watch a lot of films, but uh, I would not say there was one particular film. I try to watch a lot of different diverse films. That way, one gets a kind of a broader reach and scope. Um, and I'm also part of a film festival as a jury. So every year I get to watch like 100 films in a week. I'm also part of New Day Films in the acquisitions team. So every month I have to watch at least 10, 20 films in order to judge films as well. So nowadays I watch a lot of films. But it's interesting to just see the craft of, different filmmakers, how did various stories just come about and how do they use different camera angles, to put things together. I would just say that if somebody would want to pursue filmmaking or any artistic avenue, I don't think that just saying, all right, I think I'm an artist and I'll just go for it. Maybe you are, but I think it's interesting to just learn the craft as well. Understanding the different strokes is important. How a camera angle is done is important. Lighting, etc. The more you learn, the more you grow. And I think just as a filmmaker, the more I experience other people's work, I tend to grow a lot more and say, all right, this is an interesting way to do it. And then not to copy things, but at least make yourself aware that this is something that's out there. And then one day you would probably use, let's say, special effects in your film, but at least you need to be aware of special effects before you just say, I'm going to use it in my next film. Because it's not like a cut and dry process. You need to be heavily involved. You need to know your music. You need to know sound. You just need to know everything, every aspect of a film before just jumping in and say, all right, I'm just going to direct the film. So that's what I would advise to anybody who's listening.
And when you're watching that many films, Harleen, does it make you want to make more films?
It certainly does. It makes me, I think, to do two things. One, it shows me my flaws actually, that, that this is the depth that I'm lacking. And it helps me grow in that sense that, okay, this is something that I should concentrate on. And secondly, it does inspire me to make more films and say, all right, you know what? Uh, Let me just try and do this next time. Because I try and ensure that I'm surrounded by good content as well. So, not just a Netflix or an Amazon Prime, but these film festivals, you know, just inspire you to get the real content out. And it's very um, fulfilling as an experience. And then when you meet the filmmakers as well, you have a very different take because you try and understand what was the backstory. So for me, it's just a holistic experience that I go through, and it's just beautiful and wonderful.
That's cool. And do you judge the films before you get to hear perhaps the artist's statement or the filmmaker's statement, or do you get to hear from them and then you judge? I was wondering how that works.
No, I just try and look at the film as an audience, because sometimes if you are judging a film and you're just judging in a way that you are a filmmaker, that the lighting wasn't good, but you know what, he was in a war zone, so for me the lighting just becomes less important. So I just look at it from an audience and say, what would it look like, and does it touch me, does it make me move, am I connected with the film, or I've lost it somewhere. So for me, that is the main criteria when I'm looking at films. Sometimes when it comes to, let's say, New Day, I need to look at some technical aspects as well, like, does it have the right quality, the sound, etc. So I would look at that aspect as well. But for me, the story is the main thing. The story is the hero of the film. And if it connects, it's on.
Great, great. Let's talk about another possibly influential aspect. How about books? Are you a reader? Are there books that have influenced your heart for other stories?
Yes, I am an avid reader. In fact, I have, like I mentioned, I have two daughters, and there are two things at home. So there's no television, for them. The 5 and 7 now. They get to see TV only on Fridays for 15 minutes. Um, but books and music, two things that are, at our place. You can find books in every room, maybe scattered. I love reading books. I'm a less of a fiction person. I love to read stories that are usually not just biographies, but just something which is more real. Um, I actually got two books here that I love. One is called the Book of Joy. I don't know if you've read this. This is a beautiful book as well. And then, one of the other favorites that I have is Trevor Noah. So this is another one that I kind of like. Easy read at night. So yeah, read a lot of books, and just to explore and broaden my horizons.
Wonderful. Um, I'll ask one more question, and I do want to allow time for others to ask questions here. One of our attendees said, Trevor Noah is on my book list. Well, I'll just chime in real quick to say that we had our monthly discussion for our reading challenge yesterday, and one of the attendees had listened to Trevor Noah's book, and she was just so in love with it and sharing it. And then I think almost everybody else was like, it's on our to do to read this. We want to read that. So thank you for sharing it again today. One last question for me. Can you tell us more about your new documentary? Good luck, Julia.
Oh yes, very exciting. So Good Luck Julia is still we are editing it right now. So what happened? It's actually a real story, and it connects with me. We got a call last year. This was April of last year. My husband got a call from one of his friends in Spain who said that one of his friends, his daughter, is in India, in a city called Nagpur, and she needs to come back to Spain. And it would have been all good in normal circumstances, but this was COVID. Spain was on lockdown, and so was India, and there was no way to get a 15-year-old from Nagpur to Bombay, which is a journey of almost 12 hours by road during a lockdown where all kind of transportation was shut. So somehow I remember that one of my cousins actually got married in Nagpur, and so they might just have contacts. So how me and my brother-in-law, who is based in Texas now, we coordinated sitting in the US, the rescue of Julia from Nagpur back to Spain. That's what the story is about, and it's very fascinating. I lived it. Those 100 hours of my life, we were like constantly on phone and WhatsApp and talking to people. And B, it is really a story that touches me because having not known Julia with no, connect whatsoever, here were families, um, the Indian family, us in the US, trying to help out a complete stranger for no reason but just humanity. That what if it was our daughter and we wanted her back? What would we have done? Just this one reason um, was there to connect all of us. And then I was like, once this was all over, as a filmmaker, I knew there was a film in there because there was so much of tension and there was this good ending at the end. But I didn't have the heart to tell Julia that, make videos, of your journey, which will help me make a film. I just didn't have the heart to do that. So once all of this was over and she reached back home a day before Easter, I gave the parents a call and I said, I'd love to make this film.
Mm,
So yeah, that's what the film is about. Good Luck Julia is getting Julia back home in Spain.
that's amazing. Well, I love that, that you could be a part of that happy ending and that humanity helping, that's really cool. Um, I want to open it up now for the attendees to ask questions here. So feel free to use either the Q&A or the chat. And then Leah is going to field those questions. And I think I see a couple things Q&A.
Yeah, I'll start with the Q&A questions. There's two of those. So the
Mhm.
first one is, what topics or stories do you address in your podcast?
Mm.
um, the podcast essentially was about Sikh history. And the reason I did that was because I wanted to become a filmmaker or wanted to do something on media, and I didn't know myself first. So for me, it was important to know my own religion, where I come from, in the truest manner. So we spent 2 years making those 13 episodes, fact checking everything and creating it in English, in bite size, about 15 to 20 minutes each, and just posting it on, on all kinds of audio apps, etc. So it was there for everyone to see, and we get good hits. I think we got about 50, 60,000 a month, which is fantastic. But the intent was first to get to know ourselves before seeking out others.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, excellent. And just kind of a follow-up question. Can you just talk about the name of that podcast and where it's like accessible on which platforms?
If you want any information, you could go to Core Films, like KAUR Films, that's the name that's listed, .com. You should have that. And the name of the podcast is literally Sikh History, nothing more than that.
Thank you. Excellent. And I'll put the QR Films website in the chat as well when we're finished with this Q&A. Okay, so let's move on to a different question. You clearly have a love for story and storytelling. When you find a story that you want to amplify, how do you decide if it would make a good film or not?
I think if a story connects with you, at least in my case, if it connects with me, I just like to go ahead with it. And to me, I just try and stay close to the character and um, not amplify it to make it look good. It has to just be true. Now if a story is going to be worth 15 minutes, I don't want to stretch it to an hour to make it look good and all of that. So it has to be true to the audience. So for me, I just look at the story and see how I can put it together and show it visually. If I can do it, then I just go ahead with it. I never think about timing or building it up, because these are all documentaries that I'm making. I'm not making a fictional story. Had it been fictional, then you can amplify it, then you can make it big, cast big, direct team members or cast. I don't do that, so I'm sticking to documentaries right now.
Okay, and let's move on to another question. Um, have there been, related to kind of choosing the type of projects to work on, have there been many stories that you aren't able to tell or complete in documentary form that you sort of thought about, but then maybe had to, move on from for a variety of reasons?
Yeah, sometimes you feel that somebody else can do a you know justice to that story. So I remember there was one person who came to me about his father. He's a multimillionaire based in Britain, London. And he said, I'd love to make this story about my father. He's written a book as well. When I looked at it, it was about heroism and, his father, how he came with just a penny during 1947 partition and how he made it big. But I just felt that at the time, sometimes you're not ready for it. Not because of various reasons, finances were there, but you just felt that you couldn't contribute to that vision of the person, and you will not be able to do a good justice to it. So I did, a fellow filmmaker who was supposedly very good. I kind of passed it on and say, hey, I'd love to assist you, but I think you are probably the right person for it. So I think it's just nice to be truthful, not about why and why not, but I think it's nice to know your strengths and weaknesses as well. And if you can, use your strengths and build a story, go for it. Um, but if you can't, and you're like, okay, I might just take 6 more months and somebody else can't wait that long, then you kind of just pass on that project. So right now I'm editing my film. If something else comes along, I'll not be able to do justice to that film because I want to finish this and give it its due. So for me, these things really matter. The commitment to a project is also important. So yeah, things have come and then I have to pass it on.
Right, the timing's not necessarily right for every project and every story. Sort of a move into a more technical question. You talked earlier about how you were very heavily involved in directing and producing Drawn Together as well as your other films. And I'm wondering what portion of that process that you found the most kind of inspirational and you enjoyed the most? Like, was it connecting with the protagonists in the film, or what was it, kind of the behind the scenes editing, or just kind of working with to determine like, okay, what order should I tell the story? So was there a particular phase of the process that you found that when the film was over, you look back on and you were like, I really enjoyed this particular portion?
So I think with documentaries, two things really happen. One, when you're interviewing somebody, you can have a set of questions, but you don't know what the answers coming through are. So for me, that process is, eye-opening. I remember shooting Keith. We were shooting close to in Reno, California, and he was answering some question about stereotypes, and I just didn't want him to stop. I kept listening to him, and he was telling a story, and I just went along. And finally, my DOP actually he said cut, And I was like, why? And he's like, my battery is over. It's been over 10, 15 minutes, you know. So I was like, oh my God, I was already involved in that whole process. So for me, that was very critical and very enjoyable, that you're getting to know the real person there. On the other hand, you know, documentaries really are made at the editing table. You, no matter what footage you have, you can have like 100, 200 hours, but at the editing table is when you actually make the film. Because it's not just what story it is, it's also from whose angle, which side of the story are you going to tell, right? So when you are at the editing table, sitting with your editor and making these cuts and say, all right, this is how I'm going to start. Um, you know, it's a very different experience. There is a certain level of catharsis there. You know, so for example, with Good Luck Julia, we really don't. At least right now, we are thinking of not starting with, you know, her story bang on. We taking a different route in terms of how do you start the story. We probably, her father really went to a radio show and to narrate the whole story. So for me, starting that from that radio show becomes very critical, and that's a call that you as a director would take. Where do you start, what angle you want to take, who would be the lead commentator or the narrator. So all of these things, you know, just come about when you're sitting and you've done your shooting, and, you know, then looking at the whole footage together. And it's a beautiful process because you're almost living the story and reliving it. um, so I think I don't see a choice there. I think these aspects really interest me a lot.
It's interesting to hear about the, I'm sure, thousands of questions and decisions that go into the editing process. And just kind of another question that feeds off of that same idea is, from a filmmaking standpoint and even the editing as well, how long does it take to complete a film, from like the origin idea, you know, to the interviews, to the editing, you know, to the promotion? Um, has the timeline varied for each of your films, or does it stay remotely similar?
Oh, that's a tough one. And the reason I say that is it's very dependent on the subject, their availability, and your own condition, frankly. You know, so I think a lot of things play a part. In some cases, finances as well, because if you're not getting the finances, how would you kind of make the film? So, for example, in Drawn Together, there were certain challenges, especially from the home front with two little ones. It was very difficult for me as a person to kind of go ahead and edit it. I mean, when I was going to deliver the child in Stanford Hospital, I remember not calling my mother or my mother-in-law. I actually called my editor that, hey, I'm going to the hospital and not available for the next 3 days. I delivered on a Saturday, and Monday I was back at work. So there were these challenges that come through, right? On the other hand, when it came to Good Luck Julia, I should have, you know, done it quickly. But at the same time, I thought, you know, COVID is going to be over and I probably can go to Spain and shoot there. And I wanted to shoot on a regular camera, which never came through. So in the end, we had to do remote interviews. So there are challenges. I guess I don't see it like a structured thing that it can be done in, let's say, 6 months. It's heavily dependent on different moving parts, I would say. In an ideal situation, start to finish, under a year is good. But I've also seen a lot of documentary filmmakers who want to follow their subjects along. And you know, people take even 10, 12 years because they want to show the growth of the person as part of the film. So it just depends on what the subject is and how are, you know, what are your challenges as well, and how can you make sure that you know, meet a certain middle ground somewhere.
That's so interesting to hear that, and there's so many factors, and that depending on the approach that the director and the filmmaker takes, like yourself, you know, you can sort of have a timeline that will be very elongated from the beginning. That's interesting too. I'm looking at the chat here, and I don't think we have any outstanding
I have
questions.
one.
Oh, yeah.
I have one question I'd like to ask, but then I'll speak a question that came up in the chat that I just want to address in case we have community members in here. Is where can we view your film? So we at Lindenwood, if we're a part of Lindenwood community, Leah and I have both put the link to streaming Drawn Together in the chat. But if someone is outside of Lindenwood community, where can they access and view your films?
Uh, that's a tough one because it's primarily in the educational space where it's available on Canopy, if people have that access. Otherwise, you can just reach out to me on my emails that are listed on my website, and happy to share. The first film is available on Amazon Prime. So it's there, and I can share it. It's all on my website, so you could get a direct link there. And good luck, Julia. Whenever it comes out, I'll give a shout out and say, hey, it's ready. We'd love to maybe screen it and share it with your community members as well. So maybe we could do that.
Do, please do. And then my last question here is, where are the three comic creators now that you featured in Drawn Together? Are they still creating?
Oh, they're doing wonderfully well. So Eileen, she's here. She's actually a senior vice president of a big bank by the day, and then she creates comics as well. So she's working on a lot of projects. Vishwajit, who's the Sikh Captain America, he's doing a lot of, he does a lot of workshops. For children as well as adults. He goes to a lot of corporate events as well. He's been to NASA, Apple, and so on and so forth, to talk about this idea of racism and stereotyping. So he's doing wonderfully well, and Keith Knight has just taken the stage. Keith actually came up with this whole series called Woke, Woke, on Hulu. So there's the 13-part series that he created, which is based on his own story. And it's a 13-part thing on Hulu, and they have already been approved for the second season. So he's doing extremely well. We are always in touch, and he's also nominated for NAACP, some award as well. So off and on, we get to hear about his accolades. So all of them are doing extremely well. Yeah, so happy with this extended family of ours. Everybody's made progress since the film came out, and when it was shown on PBS, we all saw it together. So that was another lovely moment that we shared. This past May when it was shown, we just all were like so nostalgic that this is how we shot the film, and it all came together full circle.
That is wonderful. I did get one more question. Is it difficult to choose or find a platform for audiences to view? So is it hard to make that decision where you're going to distribute your film?
Um, Sometimes, yes, because sometimes you don't really know how to, let's say, approach a Netflix, right? But on the other hand, I think you just have to find ways in which you can connect with the right people. So if you don't know something yourself, it has to be done through research or through connections, right? So for me, I think I knew that, that film, Drawn Together, is all about education. So for me, the educational space was very important rather than, let's say, a Vimeo link. So for me, getting into that educational distribution was the key. And then, one thing led to the other, and then New Day came about. And similarly, some people might think that, Netflix is a bigger deal. But, you learn as you go along. You also, if you don't have an answer, so for example, New Day, you have like hundreds of filmmakers as part of it. You just send a note out that, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me? Has anybody done this in the past? And then they'll come back to you and say, hey, I have these 4 contacts. Why don't you reach out to them and take it forward? So I think if you know it, great. But if you don't, there are various ways of getting to know as well.
Awesome. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to start to wrap this up because I know we are very, very close to the top of the hour. So if you can, I have one last question not for you, Harleen, you're totally off the hook, but I have one last question for our attendees who are still hanging in there. If you could just put in the chat one thing you learned or are inspired by from Harleen's talk, that would be wonderful. And I'm going to start to close us up. The first thing I want to mention is that if you want to be a part of the DEI Reading Challenge, we are still continuing through the end of April. And so if this talk has inspired you to read diverse books, be a part of a community of readers who want to read together and grow and connect and earn free prizes along the way, we are going to put a link in the chat for you to sign up to do that. And now I'm going to turn it over to Leah to announce the winner of our I See Me gift card. Drum roll.
Yeah, so virtual drum roll. The winner of our e-gift card is Brittany Brown. And what will happen is we will send the e-gift card to you tomorrow via the email that you use to register for this event. And so you'll get it sent directly to you. And congratulations on winning, and thank you for attending today.
Well, in our three-part thank you starts with the Brittnys, if you will, Brittany Brown and Brittany Guttermuth, for all of their support and their sponsorship for this event from the Lindenwood Learning Academy. And then secondly, most importantly, I should say, Harleen, thank you so much for sharing your heart and your story with us today. You had sent me an email earlier this week and you said, I just want to share my heart. Well, by golly, you have done so. So thank you so much. And thank you for being a gift to this world and doing what you do. And then finally, thank you attendees for joining us today. We hope that you can walk away with inspiration for being better to one another, and that you have received some reading recommendations, and that you now have a favorite filmmaker to follow. So be well, take care, everyone. Thank you so much, Harleen. Thank you, thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.